Welcome, writers, game masters, and creatives to the World Builders Tavern. Today we are talking about Andy Weir's novel, Project Hail Mary, so spoiler warnings if you haven't read this book. Now grab an ale and pull up a chair. I'm Emma, your friendly barkeep, along with Allison.
Hello.
And Christiana.
Hi.
We are so happy to have you all here. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, this book was awesome. This is my first time reading it. I'm so excited to talk about it. Christiana and Allison, had you both read it before or just Allie?
Just Allie.
This was my suggestion. So this is my second time reading it. And it does not fail the second time either. It was, oh my gosh, so much fun. And I actually read it aloud to my husband, who hadn't read it, and I knew he would love it, and he did, and it was amazing.
It's awesome. The world building is great.
Yeah. It's have either of you read The Martian by Andy Weir?
I have not. It's on my list now, though, after reading this one.
Yes. It's very... Yeah, he has a very distinctive style, and I loved The Martian. So as soon as this was suggested, I was like, yeah, I know I'm going to love it. And I did.
I also loved The Martian. Andy Weir has this I think he has this love of kind of sarcastic characters a little bit. I would say The Martian's main character is a little bit more sarcastic than Ryland Grace is, but there you still kind of feel that. And just the very, very heavy science, which almost reads like a textbook at some point, and it baffles me why I like it so much, like why I like this book so much, because I feel like that would just be boring. Like, why am I not bored by this stuff?
I'm not gonna lie. Anytime there was like a solid paragraph about math, I did not read it.
That's fair. You can't
I kind of skimmed it. Yeah, I skimmed it because I became a writer, so no one will ever ask me to do math. That's my whole career is based around. I'm terrible at it. It gives me anxiety to even look at a string of numbers. So
I probably would have done the same thing, except I was reading it aloud. So like I had
really
to go go over that stuff. But I still didn't find it hard. Like it was still super interesting.
Yeah. I think fictional or like pseudoscience is really hard to do. Because it's hard to get something. And I mean, I'm not a mathematician or a scientist, and I'm sure that people who actually like deal with space stuff are reading this going, wow, that's all wrong. But to me, a layperson, it seemed plausible, like the explanations he was making up. I was like, okay, sure, I buy into this, but also that they are not boring, but also that you don't need to understand them in order to understand the world. Like you can just skip them and just understand the premises. Oh, well, he calculated such and such. And it's really hard to balance all those three things. And I think Weir did a really good job in the book of doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure scientists are poking holes all over this thing, but I really like that Andy Weir does tend to start from what is potentially possible.
Yeah,
and then kind
I
of
did
goes
Google
from
it
there.
actually, because I was like, is any of this like correct?
Possible?
And apparently almost all of it's correct. He does his very best to ensure that it's correct, and then he says he gives himself a couple gimmies per book.
I mean, that is
like Xenonite or whatever.
I mean,
like
obviously
Xenonite.
we don't have the technology. I mean, because astrophage doesn't exist, so it's all hypothetical,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But that is how he wrote The Martian, though, was how would someone survive on Mars? What are things that could go wrong? How would you solve this with science, kind of thing? So
yeah. I think that's one of the things to balance, or a good way of balancing with science, or even with the magic system, because often, pseudoscience and magic are not that dissimilar in that they're ways that kind of break the current science of our world. But I think a good thing is you have to be internally consistent, because you can only ask people to buy into so many things. And if you're breaking your own rules, it's not going to work. And then also basing it as much in reality as possible, and then doing a few things that sort of skew from that also, I think, help with that, because you're only asking your readers to believe a couple of crazy things instead of like a ton.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with like science fantasy where you just kind of make up everything also, but that's not what this genre is, and I think no one does it as well as Andy Weir does.
Yeah. He even like this is a bit about The Martian, but he, as someone who works in communications and does a lot of PR, the PR person in The Martian, That's a very accurate portrayal of some meetings I've been in. You know, like everything he does feels weirdly researched, except for, and I'll bring this up later. There's one line. There's one line that I highlighted and said, no.
I can't wait to hear what it is.
It's so tiny and nitpicky and stupid, but
honestly, the most unbelievable thing in this world, having just come from the pandemic and being really cynical, is the fact that the world actually worked together to defeat Astrophage and didn't just ignore it and hoped it would go away. I found that actually took me out of it a little bit because I was like, this is not how this would happen.
Yeah, right.
We've just seen this.
I mean, they do say, like, Strat does say when she's trying to convince Grace to go on the ship, she's like, the world is going to become hell. We're going to all break out into war. We are not going to be together on this. So like, I did think that was
true.
Pretty
there
realistic.
wasn't at least an acknowledgement of it. And I think the character of Strahd was necessary to move the story along, because for every one of these things you couldn't have, well, all of these governments had to get together and debate it or whatever. So even though perhaps that's really unrealistic that one person would just be appointed basically like emperor of the earth, I think in this story you needed it. Just otherwise it would become an unbearable like political story.
I do think humanity was very smart in appointing Strahd. She's a wonderful character. I really love her.
Great character. I mean, she's a kind of a terrible person, I think, but she's a great character.
She is. Everything she did was to save humanity. And she had to make those hard choices. I don't know.
But I think maybe one of the hallmarks of somebody being able to make those hard choices is being a bad person.
Maybe. I don't know.
Drugging someone and shoving them into a spaceship on a suicide mission is a little morally gray.
But like, you gotta do what you gotta do to save humanity, you guys.
Yeah. I don't think she was a bad person. I think she was a very, very driven person.
Yeah. I think she would say that whether she's a good or bad person is entirely irrelevant. Like,
exactly.
She's doesn't
the right
matter.
Person. That's what matters. Yeah.
Also, I realized I said Strahd instead of Strat, like Strat, and that's because my D&D campaign is playing Curse of Strat.
It's in your mind.
She's not an immortal vampire, just to clarify for everybody.
Well, we don't know that. It wasn't explicitly stated.
The best sort of world building is where you can never confirm or deny if a character isn't exactly a vampire.
So this book is in my top 10 books of all time.
Really?
That checks out.
I loved The Martian, but I don't think I would put it in my top 10 list. And I think the reason that this book breaks that barrier is because of the relationship between Ryland and Rocky.
Oh my God,
adorable.
Rocky.
I love
Rocky.
Gosh.
Like
this book made me cry. Ugly cry.
Every chapter I would have to pause and put the book down and just look at my husband and be like, Rocky's so wonderful. And he's like,
yeah, the parts, huge spoiler. I know we already gave spoiler warnings, but the part where it's just kind of assumed Rocky is just floating away in space on his own to die.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I finished that book, I think about it once a day and feel bad. I know he was saved, but I just put myself in Rocky's position and I'm like, oh, it's so sad. He didn't deserve that.
Okay. Let's not do the end right yet. But I want to talk about when Rocky and Ryland first meet, because there's so much to unpack here about the world building. First of all, we have the language barrier.
Yep.
So maybe we talk about that a little bit. I know Christiana wants to talk about nonverbal communication. So let's get into that.
I'm a big giant dork who works in communications and is doing a master's in communications. And communications, I eat, sleep, and breathe communications. I thought they handled that so well because working in communications, I have thought about this question so many times. Like, what would I do if I was the first person to meet an alien? I think about it constantly because it's such an interesting exercise career-wise, but also just like, I want to meet an alien. And I thought they were so smart about it because I'm like, God, I wouldn't have thought of that, but that is exactly right. Like the 3D models. Showing the galaxy to pinpoint where home worlds are and the 3D models of ships. And then I thought the kind of like the beads with strings showing the molecules and then the number of the beads with strings to show the differences in atmospheres.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, such a brilliant way to communicate. Like that's so smart to me. And because it's such a I have an example, which is very silly, but to try and like say how these communications happen. So I worked for a park system for a long time. Dog poop is a problem in parks. So you put up a sign saying, please pick up your dog poop. Okay, but not everyone reads English. So then how do you portray that in images? Do you have a little stick figure person picking up a piece of poop? Okay, that's great. How do you know it's dog poop? You have to have the dog in there, right? And then how do you make sure that in simple forms, what a dog looks like what is the base form of a dog? Like there's so many things that you have to consider when you're trying to communicate non-verbally, and like even visual rhetoric and things like that, right? Like the way restaurants are painted in with certain colors to try and make you feel cozy and warm. Like there's so much more to communication than just words. And I think it could be an easy thing to fall into. And they did eventually get to language, and it makes sense why they would want language. And I think one of the tiny little holes in this and how they communicate is like, how do you, if you could speak in multiple notes, how are you not saying 5 words at the same time? Like that could have been the way that he spoke.
Yeah, why aren't his sentences just like one quote unquote word?
Why do we have the same sentence structure as a completely different species? But that's
I do like that Weir sort of touches on that a little bit, in that Rocky does have a different grammar. Like he ends each word with question.
That's really cute.
Which is kind of adorable.
So
so it's sort of there, but it's obviously not as it would realistically be, right?
But that's one of the gimmies that had to happen.
Yes, of
or
course.
your book would be unreadable.
Exactly. That's one of the things where I'm like, never in a million years would they have these, like, even some, like, how would we know that they have subject verb sentences, subject verb direct object? Like,
how do you explain the word the? Like,
exactly.
Like, it would have taken also a lot longer for them to become as fluent as they were.
Yes, I think it would take longer.
I think that worked really well for the book, because I was a little apprehensive when they first started doing the communication. I was like, okay, how long is this going to go on for?
Yeah, exactly.
But, it was like one chapter really dedicated to like, okay, here's how we're doing this. And then after that, it was like, we've established this. We don't have to go into this every time, sort of thing. And then it was just brought up from time to time, like, oh, what's this one particular word, as like a fun detail.
And I think the gimme works because he did such a good job with the nonverbal communication. Right? Because it wouldn't be, he could have kind of copped out and been like, 2 weeks later, we figured out how to talk to each other.
Totally could have. It was so much better this way.
But it's believable.
It really showed, it showed the process.
One thing Ryland does comment on is how like nouns are really hard, because like, how do you translate like names like Ryland?
Right.
Proper nouns.
It's just a,
proper nouns,
sound.
And he ends up saying that Rocky ends up calling him Grace, because they have a shared word for grace. And I was a little bit like, how did you
communicate what
that was? Like, that wouldn't have just been a quick 2-minute conversation.
This is an esoteric concept of forgiveness. Let's just
it's a very complex word that they might not even have a word for. I think that would have taken a bit long, but it's fine because we don't need to read that.
That's knowing what you need to explain and what you don't need to explain. I feel like we come back to this every time we talk about world building, but it really is just like the crux of world building is just like, know when to stop.
And
also I think that's one of the things too about writing genre fiction is there's a certain amount of buy-in that your audience is automatically doing, because you know that we are reading non-realistic stories. Your audience is prepared to buy into it, so you're allowed to do that. Like, you don't have to get too bogged down by your fake science being like, okay, well, what's the exact, like, you have to do it to a certain degree, but you don't have to get too hung up on it, because as long as you're internally consistent and have some plausibility for people to sink into, they'll believe you, because we want to believe you. That's what makes the story fun.
I also, one of the things I love about this alien so much is that it's not a humanoid. Like, that's so overdone in sci-fi, and it's for good reason. It's because sci-fi in TV shows had human actors, and it's hard not to make them not look human, you know, so we have so many human looking aliens. But just the fact that Rocky's like this Rocky spider is just amazing.
Yeah. And I'm terrified of spiders. So when he first described Rocky, I was like, ew, I hate this. And then eventually I was like, oh, Rocky, sweet, love Rocky.
I actually love that Ryland tells him that he looks kind of like this creepy creature. And Rocky's like, yes, I am dangerous creature. Fear me. Just like sarcastically. It's so funny.
It's very cute.
But yeah, so his I just love how Weir deals with his physiology. So having like 5 legs or arms, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And just certain times where like they just can't like get into each other's headspace. Like there's a point where Ryland is fixing something on the ship and he's like, I can't unscrew this thing. And Rocky's like, why not? And he's like, well, I have this in one hand and I'm holding on with the other. And Rocky's like, well, just use your other. Oh, wait.
Use your third hand.
You use that third hand, and just like adjusting to each other's differences.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that what was it when they brought up the fact that if they said something was cultural, they just kind of both went with it. And like there was the understanding that they wouldn't understand, but that you just need to respect that it's important to the other person. It's really just a great life lesson.
That
like,
was
can we all just do this? Like, it doesn't matter if you think that watching me sleep is weird. I need you to do this, so just do it. Like,
exactly. Although, Kate, there was one point in the story where Ryland abuses this. So they're heading back to Rocky's ship, and Ryland wants to work on the science of astrophage. And it would be way safer to wait the 11 days to get to the ship because you have to like unspool it. But he doesn't want to because he's impatient.
Right. Yeah.
And Rocky keeps like being like, but why? Like it's safer to do this. And Ryland eventually says it's a human thing. And then Rocky goes with it. And both my husband and I are like, no, you're being stupid. Like this is a stupid decision. You could like destroy humanity and destroy your ship just because you're impatient. And he does it anyway, and then it ends up working out fine. And I actually was surprised by that. I thought that was going to cause a problem.
Although to be fair,
it is a human thing.
And ruining things that is entirely a human thing, which
it is our culture very much as humans to be impatient and ruin stuff.
I was surprised by the fact that I really enjoyed the amnesia trope.
Well,
actually, so I wasn't surprised that I enjoy it because I really like this trope when it's done well. So I guess I was just pleasantly surprised that it was done well. I thought that Weir did a really good job of balancing when to do flashbacks, how much information to reveal, the things that you learned things about Grace's character kind of as he did, which was kind of cool. And things then would make sense, like, oh, why isn't he swearing? This is weird. And you're like, oh, well, because he's an elementary school teacher. Like, he's not going to be
adorable. All his like almost swears, and he does actually swear a couple times.
Which has so much impact. Like, when he first sees Rocky, and that's the first time he swears in the book, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is really has that big impact. And I really like the trope of like you being your own enemy without you realizing it, which I liked for this like amnesia thing. And it reminded me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Zaphod Beeblebrox says something similar, where a past version of himself embarked on a quest but like erased his mind so his future self wouldn't know about it. And I just love that trope. I love the idea that like past you has screwed over present you, and in this case it wasn't entirely his choice, but it was like really funny.
I'm going to be the odd one out. I did not like the amnesia trope.
Really? Oh, interesting. Say more.
I thought it was interesting. I did like it. I did like the way it revealed information, but I was so annoyed as someone, again, communications. Why would you not just have a manual of what the whole project is on that ship? Like, would you not prepare a package for every person knowing that's a possibility? If you want this thing to actually happen, and save humanity, would they not wake up with a little book on their chest like, hey, you've been in a medically induced coma for 3 years, and this is who you are, this is what you're doing? And that bothered me the entire time. Every time I couldn't remember something, I was like, where's the manual?
Was that just kind of expecting at least 2 people to survive or something?
Yeah, which seems weird because they did have all these fail safes, but then the like idea that people would die on the journey would just especially because she knew she was sending one of them in with amnesia. She already had one third of your crew that doesn't know what's going on automatically. So like maybe they're so lucky that he wasn't the one who died, because if he had died and the other 2 had lived, humanity would be dead. Like, crazy that they didn't. I know like they couldn't send more people because you have to have like a relatively small ship, but like also why didn't they just send 2 ships? Like, why didn't they send this first ship and then send their second?
They only had enough astrophage for one.
Oh right, sorry, never mind, I take it back.
That would have been smart if they'd had more. But
that's the one thing that's like the one genuine flaw that I found in this book that genuinely irked me. Because if you want, like, why would that is not how you handle a crisis. Like, that's not that is not what, like, especially Strat would not have that oversight.
No,
give them the book and then have it that, like, I don't know, it rotted with the people or whatever, like all the books got blasted into space or like something. Just put it there and then destroy it, because it irked me so much that I was like, that is such a big oversight. I can't believe it. Like, I was so frustrated. But
I read a book review that said something similar for this book that was like, NASA is built on checklists. The fact that there is not a checklist of like the mission is just like insane. Like, you would never do that. Yeah.
I did really like the reveal, how information about the mission and about Ryland's person, like about him as a character, was revealed. Because he had memories.
It's
that's what I mean. I liked what it did for the story. It was literally just that one thing that I was like, oh my god, that's seriously. Fair.
I find it really interesting that all of his character growth kind of happened off screen, in that like when we see him as a character, he's already like the selfless, like heroic one because he's in space and saving it, and then you learn that he was actually this coward, but at that point he's already undergone the growth and then goes back to save Rocky, you know? So it's not even like we see him.
I don't know if he had. I feel like him choosing to save Rocky was the growth moment. Yeah. That's what I felt.
Well, see, I feel like that showed the growth, but I think he was already, like, I think he would have done that at the beginning of the story as we see him when he wakes up as well.
I don't know if he would have. I think that's the whole point, that he had this choice and he could have made the selfish decision, and like, because he could have just gone home to Earth, and then he decides, nope, I'm gonna change. I'm not going to be a coward, and saves Rocky. I really loved that.
Yeah. I also, this is kind of off topic from character growth, but it's something that it threw me back. This is my own memory. This is my own Ryland Grace moment. I distinctly remember in college being in a creative writing course, and the instructor saying, don't you dare ever start a story with someone waking up.
Yeah.
It is done to death. But then she added, if you're going to do it, it has to be gross and visceral. Like, there has to be a very distinct and disturbing reason for that person to be waking up.
Interesting.
And this kind of followed that. At first, as soon as I was like, and I drift back to sleep, I was like, Andy Weir, you broke the rule. But then he broke the rule in a beautiful and delicious way. So it's okay. So.
Yeah. The trick is how to know when you're that one exception.
Exactly.
I mean, you can do it when you're Andy Weir, but maybe you can't do it. If you're
not Andy Weir, you're not allowed to do this.
But you might not be able to do it as well.
Yes.
So, and there might be better ways to intro your book.
And I'd say for sure, if it's your first novel or your first video game or your first thing, don't have them waking up. Like,
avoid it.
Once you've got a couple projects under your belt, then go for it. But I'd say rule of thumb is don't have your character. And I've done the same thing. I started a book with a character waking up, and one of my beta readers was like, "Why are you doing this?" I was like, "Oh, because it's easy.
It's just the thing to do."
Yeah.
What I did in that class is I immediately forgot what she said and started my story with someone waking up immediately in that class. But it was really, really gross and weird. And so she was like,
Yeah.
you get a pass on this one because it was
That's
really
awesome.
gross and weird and disorienting. And so
There
I was
you
like,
go.
yeah.
Speaking
Didn't
of
even
gross,
remember it. Yeah.
Speaking of gross and weird, aliens eating, man.
Yes. Yeah.
Rocky's physiology, super interesting.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah.
have an immune system.
Yep.
Just boils germs in his own blood.
Yeah.
Eating isn't enjoyable and is actually something you do in private, which
Yeah.
I found fascinating. And I'm just curious how like Andy Weir decided did he like go like, okay, here are normal things about humans. How can I do the
Yeah.
opposite? Or how can I do something different?
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like this was a writing project for him. First of all, to show off how sciencey and smart he is. Second of all, to be like, I am going to absolutely annihilate the humanoid alien trope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I
It
love.
How can I
almost
make
felt
this?
like
Yeah.
a vendetta against the humanoid alien trope. Like, I am going to do it so different. It's going to be unrecognizable.
Yeah.
And yet he didn't go as different as he could have. Like
Yes.
there are a ton
yeah.
of things which he kind of excuses by, oh, we had the same ancestor.
Yeah.
Just with culture and the quickness of their ability to communicate.
Yeah.
Even like Rocky picks up things like thumbs up really quickly, like
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the fist bump.
oh my god, I say to Jordan all the time now, fist my bum.
Fist my bump.
I loved that because I have a very good friend who is French and English is a second language. And the first time we did fist bump, like they knew what it was, but they didn't know what the thing was in English. So they said, fight my punch.
Yes.
And now I say that all the time. So as soon as I got to that line, I was like, that is a tricky thing. That is genuinely something to be confused about.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this seems like a great time for proprietor's pick. So, Allison, do you want to talk to us about a book?
I do. An upcoming book from this year. This one was tough because no one writes like Andy Weir. So at first I was looking up for like something really sciencey, and I'm like, I'm not gonna get anywhere with that.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love most about Project Hail Mary is how two very different lives come together and they have to work together, which is also the theme in the book I'm about to tell you about. If you liked Project Hail Mary, you might like Secret Project Number 3 by Brandon Sanderson. And if that seems like a weird title, and you don't know about Brandon Sanderson, that book title will change. But Sanderson released a Kickstarter last year where he was like, hey, you guys, I'm going to write, was it 4 or 5 new books and release them this year, and you can kickstart them. Did
The
you
man
guys
is a
my
machine.
goodness.
about that? I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to back the Kickstarter, but the shipping to Canada is insane.
Same. I was like, I want these books, but I'm gonna have to buy them later because so this is his 3rd project in this series. It doesn't have an official name yet, but I'm sure it will soon. It's coming July 1 of this year, and here's the synopsis. Yumi comes from a land of gardens, meditation, and spirits, while Painter lives in a world of darkness, technology, and nightmares.
Ooh.
When their lives suddenly become intertwined in strange ways, can they put aside their differences and work together to uncover the mysteries of their situation and save each other's communities from certain disaster? Sound familiar?
Yeah.
I love Brandon Sanderson, and I know a lot of our listeners and members of our Discord community do as well, so I don't feel too bad about talking about a really well-known book in this subject for this episode, because I'm
That
really
does
excited.
fit almost creepily well to the general plot, but it's a great example as to how you can take the same kind of journey and make it something completely different.
I'm sure this will be a very different story, but I'm excited to read it when it comes in July. And if you do read it, tell us about it. Tweet at us. Come join our Discord and talk about it. Yeah.
Stand outside our windows with a stereo.
Ooh, yeah, there you go.
Think about it.
Like,
Yeah.
secret project number 3 sucked. You suck for making me read it.
Mediocre.
Mediocre.
All right. Well, until that book comes out, we're going to have to tide ourselves over with something, and we might as well do it by writing and creating our own project. So if you're going to be writing or creating your own project between now and July, here are some questions you should ask yourself or things to think about. It is last call.
Okay, I've got one. When you are creating an alien in your story, think about something really normal to humans and then how you could make that either the opposite or different in the alien. So for example, we have 2 arms and with 5 fingers. And Andy Weir was like, I'm going to make my alien have 5 arms. And that's a pretty simple one, but then you can go even further and be like, we go dig into culture, like we eat with each other as a community thing. It's not gross.
Yeah.
And then Andy Weir was like, let's make food a really private, cultural, kind of like going to the bathroom. In fact, it was going to the bathroom as well. So, there's that. So think about what's normal. How do I make it not normal? How do I make this alien really different?
Allie, when you said that, I just realized Rocky has claws. So we have 2 arms with 5 fingers, and he has 5 arms with 2 fingers.
I thought he had 3 fingers.
Does he have 3? No,
yeah,
that ruins my realization.
That's why he thinks in base 6.
Base 6, right. He has 5 arms with 2 plus 1.
2 plus 1. It still works.
All right, Christiana, what else should we think about other than 2 versus 3 fingers?
I would say especially if you're going into science fiction, it is important for things to be internally consistent and to make sense within the story. But if you're going with hard sci-fi like this, you got to give yourself a gimme. Otherwise, it's going to be a textbook, not a novel, right? Like if you truly only ever stick to things that have already been done and exist in science today, it's not science fiction, right?
Yeah.
So pick and choose wisely. Like as we mentioned with the communications and the language, huge gimme to assume that they have an even somewhat semblance of sentence structure like we do. But the story would not work, and it just literally wouldn't be a story without that gimme. And it's a very forgivable one because everything else was still weird and you still showed the struggle of getting there. But if you're doing hard sci-fi, you gotta accept the fact that you're gonna have to have a little leniency with it.
Yeah. And I would say, building off of that, my advice would be consider whether your story needs to be hard sci-fi, because it doesn't have to be. You can do soft sci-fi, you can do fantasy. I think that doing hard sci-fi, if you don't have a science background, is going to be really, really tough. And you can do it for sure, but you don't have to. There's nothing more valid or more scientific, like more sci-fi-y about hard science fiction. You can do a soft science fiction and write just as good and just as interesting of a story. So consider whether hard sci-fi is what your genre is, or if there's a different genre that would fit you and your experiences and your knowledge a little bit better.
Interestingly enough, I recently read an article or a blog post or an e-newsletter, I can't remember what, from author Ada Hoffman, who wrote The Outside, I think is the title of the book. And it's like, I read the book and I was like, this felt really hard sci-fi. She's not a scientist, she's a computer programmer. And just the way the book was written felt very similar to this book, and just all this like science talk and stuff. And she wrote an article about like how it's all nonsense, but people still often call it hard sci-fi or think that it's real just because of like the way she structured the book. So like you can still get this kind of feel and
Yeah.
have your science be nonsense if you want. And if you do, I recommend reading The Outside by Ada Hoffman, as it's a really good example of how to do that.
Yeah. Oh, I need to quickly air my grief with the one sentence
Yes.
that bothered
we
me.
almost forgot about it. Air your grief. This is a
Okay.
new section called
So much,
Air your
so much,
grievance.
so much science, clearly so much research. And then there's the Canadian scientist from UBC, which I was like, shout out UBC, that's cool. And then he said the provincial government of British Columbia and the national government of Canada. And I was like, no, I've worked for both of those. You would say the BC provincial government and the federal government. That is like no Canadian.
Yeah, no one says the national government
ever.
of
Nobody has
Canada.
ever said that. Not even once.
And that was like the one sentence that genuinely, like, I was like, Andy Weir, come on.
So if you write Canadians in your story, get a Canadian beta reader.
Talk to Canadians.
Talk to a Canadian. And that's closing time. Thank you so much for joining us at the tavern. We hope to serve you here again. Now scram.
Bye.
Bye.